Rose has asked me to tell you what people in Europe thought of America in the 1920s and 30s. My name is Julius Blumenthal, and I was born in Frankfurt, Germany in 1926. When I was a little boy, Frankfurt was already a big city, lots of cars, and yet bread and milk was still delivered every morning by horse and cart. We sold bottles and other trash, old clothes to men in horse-drawn carts. Our shoes all had leather soles and were uncomfortable compared to shoes now. Phones were attached to the wall. You had to talk to an operator to make a call, and your neighbors could listen in on their phones if they wanted to, just by lifting their receiver. I used to wake up early in the morning and go across the street to the park, where I would gather sacks of chestnuts and deliver them to the soap factory before school to get spending money. Every week the iceman carried a dripping block of ice up the stairs for our refrigerator. If we wanted ice cream, my parents would give me a large cut glass bowl, and I would walk to the store and get them to fill it, then carry it home again. I still have the scar on my left hand from when I was 6 years old, and I tripped and broke the bowl. Europe was going through a lot of changes at the time. The First World War had killed a lot of men and ruined cities. The kings of Europe were being replaced by dictators, and elected governments and people were becoming dissatisfied that their lives were decided by who their parents were. If your father was a butcher, the best you could aspire to was to become the best butcher in town. It was extremely unlikely that you could become a university professor or doctor. Your destiny was decided by the family you grew up in. Unless you were a brilliant musician or genius artist, there were very few paths to a different life from your parents, particularly if they were poor. America was the shining beacon, a place where a poor man could make his own destiny and even own land. We used to call it the land where the impossible is possible. If you wanted a better life, you moved to America. In the 30s, as Hitler and the Nazi Party came to power, my father decided to get out of Germany and go to America. Before 1921, anyone could come to America, but the Congress passed laws restricting immigration to try to keep socialists and communists out of the country. So there were quotas and an immigration process to go through. My uncle in Los Angeles was willing to sponsor us and make sure we wouldn't become a financial burden. But because of the quotas, it took us many years to get in. In the meantime, things were getting very bad in Germany for the Jews. On Kristallnacht, the Nazis broke into our house while we hid in the attic and smashed my mother's beautiful glassware and china and pushed the piano out of the second-story window. They burned down our beautiful synagogue and chased the professor we knew in the park across the street, and then beat him to death while we watched, helpless, from the attic window. My father realized we couldn't wait anymore to get out. He and my brother arranged for me to escape on a Kindertransport, a train full of children that were taken to England without their parents. Jews in England sponsored 10,000 children from Europe to come to England, even though they were having their own problems and preparing for war with Germany. My father sewed name tags in my clothes and took me to the train station. I wasn't allowed to take any money and only one small suitcase. When I arrived in London, there was no one to meet me, and I didn't speak any English. But I was lucky, and my father made it out of Germany a few days before the war started. Most of the children never saw their parents again. I was evacuated to the countryside when the bombs started falling on London. But my father took me out of school and back to London to work and support the two of us, since he didn't speak English. I finished school at night, and during the day I worked as a dental assistant, casting false teeth and gold inlays. I managed to go to 2 years of college at night and was studying to be a dentist. I was 20 when we were finally allowed to move us to the US, where I worked sewing furs, selling stationery, and then optical supplies. I started my own businesses and was successful enough able to retire in my early 40s. I have 2 sons who are very successful, one doing genetic research in Boston and the other opening up China for American medical devices. Their possibilities are only limited by what they can accomplish. I'm very happy that I finally was able to come to America. In the 1800s, people in Europe thought in America the streets were paved with gold. By the time I came, we knew better, but it was the land of unlimited opportunity for me and for those who were willing to work hard. I've had a much better life than I would have if Hitler had never come, and I had stayed in Europe. There's more racism against Jews there, and less possibility of improving your life by your own efforts. The words of Emma Lazarus, a Jewish poet from New York, on the Statue of Liberty were true for me, and I am grateful. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door.